Welcome to the Up Podcast, raw real talk on everything young parenting.
From self-care, co-parenting, and family planning, to balancing school, work, relationships, and goals.
Together, we're challenging society's assumptions and building a safe and supportive community for young parents.
One honest conversation at a time. So join us on the journey.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Yup episode. Did you miss us? Back again as always. It's your favorite, Divine, and your other fave, Brandy. And today we are really making light of a, deep topic that we're going to be talking about, which is grief. And so we kind of have, went back and forth about this topic, and it took us a little bit of time to even get to this point to be able to share it, but it's time. And so today we are going to be talking about grief, talking about our grief journeys, talking about kind of how we deal with it, and also bringing light to other types of grief that are not just the norm that people think about. So I think we can just start, if we just want to share kind of our own relationships with grief, our own grief journey, some of the things that we've, grappled with this.
Yeah. I think honestly, my biggest form of grief is grieving myself. Obviously before I had my daughter, but even now, going on 9 years into this, still picking up the pieces and connecting the dots is a lot. As a child, I didn't really experience a lot of death or grieving in my childhood. So I think that is why it affects me more now as an adult, because one, I know death and grief is real, but also I feel like now I'm thinking oh my gosh, any day, oh my gosh, my mom, oh my gosh, my grandma, how am I going to react? How am I going to put on this mask for my child? And it's honestly, she has experienced more death, I feel in her life as a child than I have. So it's been challenging to navigate that from a parent side point of view, when I haven't really experienced it much, nor am I the best with coping mechanisms. So I feel that is a big challenge for me. But I would say my most personal in-depth experience of grief is myself, honestly.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because I think, I don't know, I can share. Grief is such a tricky thing. I know I've shared this before, I'm sure, but as a mental health professional who helps people through grief, and I know the stages of grief, I know the coping mechanisms, I know how to talk somebody through how they're feeling, but sometimes when you do know that, you kind of neglect yourself. And I can share kind of, I've been on this really weird grief journey probably since September of 2023. So we're a year and a half in, right? And it all started I remember one night I got home from picking my daughter up from gymnastics, and we got home maybe 10 minutes early, and I was just thinking okay, this is great. She must have got off early, or maybe the freeway wasn't as packed, something. We got home earlier than usual, and she went outside to take the dog out, and she comes back in and she goes, "Mom, did you hear that?" I was like, "Hear what?" And she's like, "I don't know, but something's on fire." And so I remember running to the window and seeing right outside of my window, it's a parking lot and then the street. And this is a street that the only way in and out of our complex. So this is what the street that we literally just turned on 10 minutes ago, 10 minutes early, right? And there's a car on fire, completely on fire. And I just remember I was cooking, running back and forth to the window. It's hysteria. We live with a lot of families. And so I'm thinking oh my God, are there kids in the car? Oh my God, are there is somebody going to run out to their family member on fire? All these things, right? And I remember being kind of okay until I saw the coroner come, and I saw them put up the tent. And again, I don't know this person, and I got the story later, but I remember calling my mom and just being hysterical. I don't even think I could get the words out. I remember I was just like, something happened and there's a fire. And my mom was probably like, what is happening? You know, whatever. And so that kind of really kickstarted it because it started making me think like, wow, I haven't been confronted with like
Mm,
death in that way in a really long time.
yeah.
And fast forward a couple months later, like a cousin of mine passes away and she had some health challenges, but it was also like somewhat unexpected and it was like a weird complication. And I just remember like not feeling sad necessarily, but feeling sad for like her kids. She has a daughter, my daughter's age, and like she was like maybe 5 years older than me. And so I'm thinking like, you know, and then she had other kids. And then, you know, and then like a classmate of mine had passed away. And again, I didn't really know her that well, but I like it was a sad thing. And then that same day I remember like going to pick up my daughter from school and getting an email saying like an unhoused person had passed away on the street. And I just like
Mm,
right there at the school. And so then I'm driving past it and I just like am driving home with my daughter in the back and I'm like bawling. And I
yeah.
couldn't figure out why I was bawling because in that span of like four people, only one of them was someone that I actually knew or knew well or grew up with or like was family, right? Um, and then since then, I lost an aunt who actually was really close to too. But like it was just this really weird period of grief. And I just kept thinking, like, this is enough for one person, right? Like, as
Mhm.
somebody who's really empathetic and somebody who, like, feels deeply for other people, I just kept thinking of, like, this unhoused person on the street. Was he alone? Was he hungry? Like, does he have family? Are they going to be able to identify him? I'm thinking about, you know, my classmate and she's young and, you know, like just it kind of had to do with malpractice and thinking like she's a young Black woman. And so that could be any of us, right? And thinking about this young guy on the street who now a year and a half later, like there's still flowers there. There's still a char mark on the street. There's still, you know, I drive past a candle gets still gets lit. And so grappling with this grief is like insane. And it opened up, I think, a door to me that I never really dealt with the grief that I had experienced as a child of like losing a cousin and being really close and like the trauma of that. I never really confronted grief. Like I knew about it, I could read about it, I could teach about it, but I never thought about it in the context of myself.
Yeah.
And so I would like, I mean, you know, that's a mouthful, but I think that we have to give ourselves the credit of like even as kids, we may see things and it may not impact us, but there's this like really great book that says the body keeps the score. It's called The
Mhm.
Body Keeps the Score. And even as kids, like we feel that. Like I remember being a kid and seeing, you know, my cousin there and I still have images of that. Like still all these years later and it still like makes me viscerally I feel it, you know? And so thinking about like you said, the grief like the death and things that your daughter has witnessed and what does that look like for our children and how do we show up when we're grieving ourselves, whether it be the
Yeah.
death of somebody or, you know, a pet. I never wanted to get a pet because I was like, I could never find like my pet, you know, whatever. And we're going strong. I have a pet and that would be awful. Right. So I don't know. I feel like I'm all over the place. I feel like this topic is like
Mhm. Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, already I'm like, "Ooh, I forgot to say this, I forgot to say that, and I forgot to say
Yeah.
that." But also, I'm like, what about, like, the expectation people have for how you should grieve? And it's like, all like, I don't know, like, not that it's this big competitive thing, but I feel like to some people it is, like, where your grief gets dismissed for someone else's, but not even, like, down to expectations. Like when I mention like I grieve myself, it really is like the thought of my reality.
Mhm.
Like one, I'm a huge lover girl and I've gotten into like traumatic breakups and I'm still healing from. And it's like the fact that I am a single mom, like that was never in the plan. The
Yeah.
fact that my next partner, now I got two baby daddies. Like that
Yeah.
was never in the plans. Like I don't know, it's just so much pressure that gets put on us and like again, trying to give ourselves grace that, we are only human and like enough is enough, but we have to wake up and keep going and there may be more added to that. Although it feels like what else could you go through? I don't know. I feel like during my adolescence specifically, Wow, it just took me back to something that I try to not remind myself of, but I had another child, like, and sometimes I forget that, and like it brings me back to a time where like I was numb for so long because I kept feeling like, what else can I keep going through? What else am I going to, what's the next roadblock ahead of me? It just, and I think that's another thing that stems into how I process things, like I'm very sensitive, and empathetic, like you said, for other people's situation. But for when it comes to myself, I do neglect myself because it's like, I don't know. I feel like I don't have a choice but to like recoup and move on,
Yeah.
just the way that life works. I don't know. Do you experience that?
I mean, definitely. I think that's the reason why. I mean, I don't know. I always try and search for the reasons of things in life, right? And I'm like, I don't understand why I was confronted with so much of this in like a year span, right? A year span of
Yeah.
this with people, and again, whether they're close to me or not close to me, like this reality all at once. I've never experienced that in my life. And so I it dawned on me that like it's time to start considering. It's time to start finding like coping. It's time to start finding like purpose and healing and connecting with other people and stuff. And I think, to be honest, like yes, I feel exactly what you feel. I think that the part of the pressure is that society doesn't really want to talk about like death or the ending of something is
Mhm.
like taboo. People don't want to talk about it. And I think that when you don't talk about it, then it becomes something that you just push down, like something you don't have to think about, whatever. And so when it comes up or comes out, it's almost abnormal,
Yeah.
right? Or like you've pushed it down for so long, or maybe you're in a stage of grief that's like the denial phase or something, right? And
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
you're not even really like you're still thinking you can call the person. You're still thinking that the relationship is
Mhm.
still there. You're still thinking that like that part. I mean, even as a parent, like there were years where I was just thinking like, oh yeah, I could still do those things, or I'm still young, or I'm still this. And yes, I am, but also like I'm a whole like auntie now. Like I'm auntie vibes now. Like I'm not like a peer anymore, right? But I think that having a child so young, I feel like I always am like a peer, right? Like I feel like I'll always be a peer. And it's like, okay, no, now my kid has friends who are teenagers, and now go sit your seat in the auntie position,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
there's some like transition with that. So I think that yes, I feel like I'm all over the place with answering what you asked, but I think that because society doesn't put any clear parameters, and because we don't talk about it, like nobody wants to talk about it, nobody wants to talk about the future or what could happen or how you could process through grief, like you just don't. And so
Yeah.
then your kids just don't. And then when they become an adult, like it's just a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it just becomes a societal norm. Like, I don't, and I think another thing too with that, coming back to politics, like people of color, low in poverty, like I feel like just right there, death rates are the highest in those geographic areas. So it's just like, I don't know, it becomes a norm where it's just like it's inevitable. And
Yeah.
like I feel like maybe it's not talked about because I don't know, it's just something that is like put on, like add on to your resume type of thing. Like you're gonna go through it and like I don't know, it becomes even harder just knowing that, everyone processes things differently. Like no one obviously is the same, but like where do we get this guidance from? Like who is that helping hand?
Yeah.
Like walking us through these feelings when, the resources are not a given to us, up front. So it's like, where do we go to? Where do we lean on? And who is going to help us?
Yeah. Yeah. Therapy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and
No.
not that is definitely not accessible to all.
Yeah.
Luckily there are some like free online um resources for that, and actually we have some content on the website about grief, where we talk about this and have some resources linked. But I mean, in all seriousness, like, I think it starts from just allowing yourself to like be wherever you are. Because
Mm,
I think sometimes when something happens and maybe you don't cry, right? Or maybe
yeah,
something happens and maybe you don't really feel, right? Because you're numb. And then all of a sudden, maybe a month later, like you're driving down the street and you see
mm,
something that reminds you of something, and all of a sudden you're just like bawling. And like
yeah,
being okay with that. And also being okay with like, I feel like we were subconsciously taught that like you should hide your emotions from children. Like you should put up
mm,
a tough front so that your children don't feel what you feel,
mhm,
right? But I think that that does them a disservice. So when I say that I'm sitting in the car and I'm crying and I'm hiding it from my daughter, why am I hiding it from her?
mm,
Right? Like why am I hiding her my feelings? Because that just teaches her to hide her feelings. And so
mm,
I don't know. Like I don't know where we begin with this, but I think it has to start with like allowing people to be exactly where they are, allowing them to like grieve where they grieve, allowing them to have like moments that just don't make sense.
no, that makes 100% of sense. I feel like that, like, it's so true. Like, I don't really think that was modeled to me in my house. Like,
Yeah.
there was either anger I've seen, or there was just dismissive behavior where, like, okay, say your affirmations, you're fine. Like, don't even project that on yourself. Like, you're A-okay. Anxiety, what? Don't even mention that. Like, let's bring out the Bible. Like, so
Yeah.
it's like, and it even like daunts me now as an adult where it's just like sometimes I don't feel like I fully know my parents' story, or I don't fully know who my parents are or the life that they lived, because maybe they wanted fresh new beginnings for their kids, but
Yeah.
I sometimes just feel so lost and not connected because that wasn't modeled to me, where we can just figure out what we're feeling, allow us to feel that way. Like, there were just certain things that were just not allowed.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it does start with just kind of bringing up that inner child. And though therapy is nice, and that takes us to another conversation of insurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, currently I don't have insurance.
Mhm.
Moving to a new state, so like, I'm in a place right now where I need therapy, and I have not. I'm like, it's been on the back burner.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I feel like so earlier you were talking about like this sense of self or just kind of grieving what you thought your life would be. And I think that as like young parents, me as a former young parent, and even still now thinking about that, like I thought I was going to have 10 kids and
Mm,
I don't
it was
know
humbling.
when, how I would be able to do that. I thought I'd be married and like just living a different life right now. And so I think that there is grief there. But like, what about even like relationships like and not necessarily just like romantic relationships but relationships with people like say like for instance I don't I am building a relationship with another my other parent, right?
Mm,
And I, and I for a long time grieved what it would look like to be like a daddy's girl. I
mm,
grieved what it would look like to like have a boy come to the house, like the whole movies of like have a boy come to the house and like my dad is there asking what are your intentions, right? And like I grieved that, and then I realized like I had to like as an adult just recently I realized that I had to kind of let go of that and be like, okay, but this is the reality of what it was, and this is where I can continue to grieve that and I can continue to like look for that and just not, like whatever, or I can create a new narrative. And so with us being like single moms and having, our children have like really, limited sets of like grandparents and like extended family and stuff, like how how are we talking to kids about the absence of family members? Because grief is not always necessarily somebody has like passed away. Like grief is like somebody is up the road and they don't relationship with me, or grief is like they've left for whatever reason, or maybe like a friend had moved away or something. Like how are we navigating that absence with our kids?
to be honest, Brandy, I'm like in the thick of it. is very hard because there were different periods in my daughter's life where, like, one, she's experienced real death from people who will no longer be here. And then she's also experienced periods of she wasn't able to see people who are, I guess, meant to traditionally be in her life. For example, her dad. There were times where it was out of protective reasons. There was periods where this person just didn't simply ask for them. And so those conversations look like, one, seeing where they're at with it. I try not to be a remembrance of bad news if I don't need to,
Yeah.
because I definitely don't want to be the one left responsible for going through the emotions or just unnecessary feelings. Yes, so there were times that, we've had to have like serious conversations. I do try to keep things as age appropriate as possible, which is hard because first time parent is just like your first time going through these things. So like I'm, I'm prone to make mistakes, and I'm sure I've have in these conversations. It's really hard to monetize and monitor yourself. Um, while trying to protect them, while also not putting like too much of a heavy burden on them, but
Mhm.
also like shedding light to reality of situations and trying to be as truthful as possible in a protective way. Um, so for people who are indeed alive, who are more so absent uh, in her life, I just try to remind her that, you have a support system here for you, and that you're not lacking in anything, which can be uh, like a tongue twister almost when like saying these things because it like bothers me of
Yeah.
like my reality and the way I feel about it. So yeah, I mean, I'm open for all the advice. We are at that stage now where she is like maturing emotionally, and verbally, that where we can have more difficult conversations. But truthfully, it's hard. It's hard not to overshare with your kids, but and then it's just hard trying to find that medium of like what is appropriate and what is not. I know for me personally, I'm a very impulsive person, and sometimes just words come out. And so, like, sometimes I have to just stop and think of what I'm going to say before I say it to her, so that she's not internalizing anything or, again, just putting that unnecessary load on her.
Yeah. That's a good point. One thing that I think is helpful, um, is like for everyone, for all of us to remember, just like for ourselves, like we have to validate those feelings, right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't necessarily have to look like, yes, stay stuck in them, but it can look like I start a lot of conversations with my daughter that are heavy or that are, grief like, which is like, you your feelings are valid,
Mhm.
right? Because I think realistically, like we put a lot of pressure on it. I don't have the answers. I don't necessarily think that like we have to like read a book about it, or we don't necessarily like that works for some kids, right? We don't necessarily have to like deal with it with our kids certain ways, but I think that just validating, sometimes they don't want like advice, sometimes they don't want a fix, sometimes they don't even want us to chime in at all. And so I try and also like start conversations with, what you're bringing this to me, what position would you like me to take with this? Like, would you like me to just sit and listen? Would you like me to help you process something, or would you like me to take action? Right. And so that kind of helps, because I realized that with Lyric, like, especially as she got older, sometimes she would tell me things and it wasn't necessarily like grief or like stuff, but maybe she would tell me things that were like sad or troubling. And instead of like, I just go into wanting to fix it,
Yeah.
And so instead of fixing it, like a lot of times she would leave frustrated and not really feel heard. Whereas I'm like, I fixed it. Like I tried to fix it. I tried to give you a silver lining, and like that's really not empathy, right? And when we talk about things like especially grief, we talk about stuff like this, like being empathetic is very different than being sympathetic. And being sympathetic means I send my thoughts and prayers to you. right?
Mhm.
It means like I that's it. Like I sympathize with you. Like I'm sad that that happened to you.
Yeah.
Empathy means I'm sitting in there with you. So I'm
Mm,
partnering with you. Like I have been through that and I'm here as a pillar for you. And so
mm,
it's like that image. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but there's an image of like being under this like animal or something that's underground. And it's like a giraffe. Like part of it is above ground and part of it is underground. But like the part that's under the ground, the part that's deeper, that's in the trenches, that's empathy. And
mm,
so when we're talking to children or when you're talking to your friends or loved ones and like helping them process grief, I think it's really important to one, give yourself grace, but then to two, be like, position yourself in an empathetic space. We've all felt this, we've
yeah.
all dealt with this. We don't, thoughts and prayers are great. But at the end of it, it doesn't make people feel more seen or more heard. And so sometimes it means getting in the trenches. Like I've talked about, I know in the past and months ago, y'all, saw the tragedies happening in my city, in LA. And like, it's great to post a post saying like, we stand with LA, right? But then you see other people who are in the trenches who are trying to like, gather information and sending out information about like resources. And you see people gathering donations and you see people like offering spaces in their homes and stuff. And that's where the empathy comes in, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that we need to lead more with empathy and less with sympathy sometimes. And I think it'll give people more of a space to heal and make them feel like they have a partner in their healing. Um, and I also think like just along with that, kind of switching gears a little bit, like I this so this hap this is I'm kind of in the thick of this has happened recently, but like can we talk about grieving the ending of something? Like whether it be you had a mom friend who you got really close with because your kid, was playing with their kid and all of a sudden their kid is not playing with your kid anymore. And now like you
Yeah.
can't really be friends with them or like whatever, or maybe they ended something. So for me, for those of you who don't know, my daughter did competitive gymnastics her whole life, really. She started gymnastics when she was 2 years old. So it was literally her whole life. And one day she just decided she was not doing it anymore. And like you can only imagine the sacrifice that goes into it, right? Like driving 3 hours a day, 5 days a week to go to like, one of the best gyms and, withholding, scheduling my school schedule around it and work schedule around it and financially what it was and like for it to just end. And I remember like going through the stages of grief, right? And
Mm,
it feels weird to say that. It feels weird to say like the stages are what? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, right? And I think that I am like at the stage of not of depression. I'm at the stage of acceptance, right? But like I will say at first I was in denial. And there were moments where I was like, she'll change her mind, or we're just gonna take a break and she'll be back. And then there were moments where I was kind of like angry that like, how are you making this decision so quickly? Or how,
mm,
life is just changing so fast, rapidly. And then I'm like trying to figure out bargain with myself and like how this my life just like looks so different. And then then you get kind of sad and you start to have like flashbacks of her doing the thing and thinking like, I'll never see you do that again, or I'll never, you know, be around these friends. I'll never be in this environment. I'll never be able, like, things will just never be the same. Right.
mm,
And so, but then also the acceptance comes of like, you're so happy. Like, I see her giggling and she's exploring, like, she's dancing and she's still acting and she's exploring volleyball and stuff. And she's just like giggling and being a kid. And at the end of it, like, that is surpasses anything else. And everything else can go. And so, can we just talk about like the stages in life where we hit those things, right? Like some of you who are watching may have older kids, some may have younger kids. Maybe your kids have changed schools. I know, Divine, you've dealt with that where like you've changed environments. And so, did you leave behind a community or friends or anything that was like made you go through that process of like grief?
yeah, 100%. I feel like two different things. The one that really stuck out to me was graduating. Like, I, like, to this day, like, it amazes me. Like, I'm a whole educated bachelor degree young lady. And, like, for a while, I could not believe it, and, like, then I was like, "Well, I know I wanna go back to school, but it wasn't looking realistic right now," and then I'm, like, enjoying my freedom of no deadlines and classwork and all of that, but I did. I left behind the very resourceful community, with the program manager, the other young woman that I lived with. Like, we were like parents of each other's kids. Like, we were co-parenting with each other. Like, we helped cook meals together, babysitting together, helping with homework assignments, grocery shopping, like all of the things. It was a literal lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um, and now I'm left with debt. So that's a big reminder there that also pisses me off. But yeah, yeah, that is something that changed a lot for me that I still am in denial about. Sometimes I wish I could go back and do things better, differently. But another thing too is leaving my hometown.
Yeah.
That's been a big thing for me. Adjusting, second guessing, did I make the right decision? Am I running away? Am I protecting myself? Am I moving up? Am I going backwards? I want to move again. Like, oh my gosh, will I ever figure it out for myself and my child? So yeah, I think those are probably the two recent biggest changes in my life, especially graduating. When I graduated, it was literally like weeks before my most traumatic breakup. So like I was grieving that while also trying to celebrate a win. So
Mm,
that was very hard for me to do. Which also ties into grief. Like, how can you, still have joy when it
mm,
feels like you should be sad and upset? So like, I don't know. I feel like I'm having identity crisis all the time, midlife crisis all the time. Like, and I'm always reminded of just like, "Oh, girl, your life has literally just begun, like, you're so
yeah.
young," and I'm just like, "Damn, there's more?" Like, what else? Like, I feel like I've done all of the things, I've gone through all of the things, like, what else am I
Yeah.
looking forward to? And it's like, I don't know, I think something I've taken out of that is just, I think we talked about this a lot on most of our podcasts, but trying to find joy in it all, being at peace with it all. Something I live by is just, like every closed door is a new door opening. So, taking things, trying to be lighthearted with myself. I guess not waiting for the next roadblock and grieving challenge, but, feeling more prepared,
Yeah.
I guess is another word of just knowing that I will be okay and that I'm allowed to feel different things. Sometimes I don't think we allow ourselves to feel things just from having to put on all of these caps and super mom and mentor and all of the things that kind of like you said we dismiss and neglect our own experiences and feelings, whether it be trying to help the next person, trying to be a present parent through it all. So I don't think I allow myself to go through things sometimes. And then like I go through the mom guilt of when I do go through these things because me going through things may be me being a couch potato. And
Right.
for some people who are a couch potato for a day or a week, I could be a couch potato for a whole freaking year. And it's like, and then I'm mad at myself, like, girl, enough is enough.
Get
But
up.
well, again, healthy coping mechanisms, good support,
Yeah.
really go a long way. And that is why Yup is such a big factor in my life because it is like everything I wanted and needed as a teen adolescent parent. So it feels good to be in a place always learning, even though, again, I'm 9 years into this. There's times I still feel like I'm at day one with it. So
Yeah.
it's like always learning something new and again, allowing myself to feel these things. And, trying to, a big thing for me was like, I think that's what like caused me to go through psychology because I hated not understanding something. Like that's a
Mm,
big thing. When I don't understand, like it really frustrates me. And so there's a lot of things that I can't find understanding in. And trying to, lean on not my understanding, but, just the way of life. God, just letting go, but picking up the pieces and nuggets that I can, because I do wanna be a emotionally mature and regulated person, so that means I have to take the steps, um, to become that and not just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you started to lean on like coping, right? And all of that is coping, like setting
Mhm.
boundaries. I kind of
Mhm.
heard in there setting boundaries, and not only like it's one thing to be something for everybody, but we've talked about this before, like you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And so if I'm so deep in my like grief or so deep in my feelings or so deep in whatever I'm going through, I cannot parent fully, even though I think that I'm keeping it, I think that I'm holding it together. I'm like a sausage holding it all together. But like, then I burst in little ways. Like maybe I'm like short tempered, or maybe I like didn't cook. I mean, to be frank, I have not ordered groceries, which I order groceries because just to go into the store, I feel like is so daunting. But I order groceries and I have not ordered groceries in like forever. Right. And so then I keep just like doing like ordering food, and that's so expensive, but I
Yeah.
do it because it's like I can't even fathom what I want to eat or what I want to. And so sometimes being in a slump, and this is not necessarily due to like grief per se, but just like due to the overwhelm of life, right? The
Yeah.
overwhelm of balancing and juggling it all and also trying to keep it together. Because you understand, maybe for me, I have a child who's very empathetic, and so she feeds off of, if mom is not okay, she's not okay, right? And so that's the reason why I try and keep it together, because I'm like, I can't put my stuff on you and now you are
Right.
weighed down. Like I need to be able to have a move a little around that I can carry your load, right? And I think that that is our role as parents, but I think that part of coping is setting boundaries and
Yeah.
saying like, I got my daughter. Somebody told me this a while ago and I thought this was so great. I think it was like one of my old professors or supervisors or something. She said, she was leaving because she's a therapist and she was leaving work. It's heavy. Like you hear people's, you carry people's like stories on your
Yeah.
shoulders all day. And like her sister called her really needing something or really feeling like riled up. And she just said, I can't,
Mm.
I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
Right? And people who are empathetic and people who, you know, really care for others, that's a really hard thing to do. But I
Mhm.
think that's part of setting boundaries, and that then leads to
Yeah.
coping. Like I have to have a little bit of wiggle room, because when I reach my door, my dog might need something, my kid might need something, I need something, because when you're going through it, like sometimes you don't eat, or sometimes you eat just like
Yeah. Seriously.
nothing, right? Or sometimes you eat like junk and you're not taking care of yourself,
Yeah.
and all these things start to happen. And so like that goes into coping, and it could be like journaling. I think that journaling is great. I think one thing that I do, and I'm going to show you all and then I'm going to shut up. But I think that one thing that I do, and if you see me doing it, you've probably seen me doing it a lot during this conversation, because to be honest, I've needed to regulate myself a few times. Um, is like I
My
tap
grandma.
and I like touch my chest. And for me, it grounds me. If I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling like overstimulated, I will always check in here. And that's just like, it's subconscious. Like I have noticed that I've been doing it, but I also, that's how I regulate, right? And so sometimes like people will like tap their hands or tap their legs, or I sometimes rub my legs, things like that. And that's an indication to like stop what I'm doing and recenter into my body and figure out, why am I feeling this way? Sometimes I don't even know why. Like I'm not always talking about grief, and I'm not always talking about like heavy stuff, but sometimes I'm just doing it and I have to be like, okay, Brandy, why are you doing that?
Mhm.
What's happening? Do you need to take some deep breaths? Do you need to
Yeah.
remove yourself from the situation? Do you need to, what is it? And so I think another part of coping really is like finding what helps with regulation,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think what you said about boundaries is so real. Like the other day, for example, I was having such a stressful day, and my mom had the nerve to be sending me paragraphs about some student loans. Okay. That, granted, it isn't her name. Thank you, mom. But I don't got time for that. Sign
Yeah.
into this, and we need to make monthly payments. Please talk about that when I see you. I
Yeah.
literally cannot. I don't have the capacity to even
Yes.
read what you said. Like that's just another. That might really do it.
Right.
for real. Like, I think, like you said, people who have like people pleased all their life, like me in particular, like that can be a hard thing of just saying no. I mean, even that is challenging. But it's so important. I think like I'm now in a place where like I'm like no filter with it. Like, no, like don't even finish your sentence. And it's funny because like I definitely practice like choosing my battles with my child, but sometimes I'm so ready to just shout no to her. Like she will come whisper and be like, "Don't say nothing. I'm gonna whisper. Just whisper back." And it definitely does calm and ground me for parenting. So like I've like tried to practice like talking quieter because like unconsciously I can get very loud and like overstimulating to myself.
Yeah.
But it's just so important to set those boundaries, especially when you are that empathetic person where everyone comes to you. Sometimes you need to not be that person, but need that other person. And if you don't have that, it's, another reason why having those coping mechanisms for yourself is so important. Um, I would say journaling is a big one for me. I want to tap back into. I think I was something I was more into like as a child, and then after going to school, I feel like writing was just a
Mhm.
chore. So it's
Yeah.
like it's so funny because I pulled out my little like journal the other day, and it was so funny because my last entry was like 2023, and here I am crossing out the three, putting like a five. Like, oh my god.
Yes.
Yeah, you just gotta find what works for you right now. It's been music and just motivational speaking. I love hearing like, real life testimonies, kind of just reminding me that, I'm not the only person in this world. My feelings are valid and I'm gonna get through whatever I'm going through.
Yeah.
So that has really been a thing for me. And also like I just moved, so like organizing, like for someone who's had to like live in clutter just due to space, now having like the space and just like deep cleaning, like it's very satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. I think everybody has to find their thing. I think it doesn't have to be anything grand. You don't have to, I don't know, like some people like change their hair color, do a big chop, or it could be that, right? But finding yourself in all of it is the best that you can do for anyone else. And I think remembering that, I have to remind myself of this too, but like remembering that even when you feel guilty about not answering the call of your friend who really needs you, or not sitting on the phone with whoever, your little cousin who's going through whatever it is, like when remind yourself that you can't show up for them until you've shown up for yourself. So even if you did sit with them, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving your best self because you're depleted. And so I
Yeah.
would say like my advice to all, including myself, is just to really like our word of the year, what was it? Intentional, like to be intentional about moments when you know that you need to center yourself back into who you are, what's important in life, what makes you tick, what your purpose is, stuff like that. Like center yourself back in there. Reach out to a community, because another thing is we've been talking about grief all day, right? We talk about grief a lot on the website, but we talk about it on the website because most of the young parents that you see, and even those that you don't see, have dealt with it, whether it be a loss of a child, whether it be a loss of a family member, whether it be grieving your old self, whether it be miscarriage, abortion, whatever it is. Like, it's all grief, and it all deserves a platform, and it all deserves a space to be healed and talked to, and community building and all of that stuff. So I mean, I don't think you'll be against this, but I think I want to just like take a moment, like a collective deep breath, because again, today was really heavy. And I want us to just be able to like center ourselves here in this moment, and then connect with us. Like, if you need support, if you just need a friend, if you're like, girl, me too. If you're like, girl, tell me more about that tapping stuff, I got you. Because I look crazy sometimes, but it is so like soul connecting.
Mhm.
um, and if you need community, honestly, Divine and I talk about stuff all the time together. Like, we are always bouncing ideas off. We are always talking about like you know, the ups and downs of life. And so we would love to join you in the conversation. It doesn't have to be on this platform. It doesn't have to be public. We can give you our numbers, like whatever, you know, and we can kind of just talk through it. So if we can just take a collective, like, deep breath and like close out as like one big community, I think that would be great.
Yes, I was actually going to say that, like, as cliche as it sounds, do not sleep on deep breaths. Deep breaths have really saved me in times of need. Like, and we actually have a video on it about like the different kind of deep breathing. I feel like even just watching that is a laugh because there is some serious deep breathing techniques out there like, that will make you smile. So like definitely don't sleep on it. Blow them candles out.
Yes. Okay. I think this is what we should do. We should breathe in for 5 and breathe out for 5. Okay?
A little longer than 5. Definitely needed that.
Definitely needed that. It always helps to like recalibrate your nervous system. So if you want more techniques like that, we can also send it to you. But until next time,
Until
we love
next
you.
time, make time for yourself and for your healing.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
If you enjoyed the Up podcast, please subscribe, share, and leave a comment. And visit youngunitedparents.org for the information, community, and resources young moms and dads need to thrive.